Hey, welcome back to the Wide Ride Podcast. I'm Manny Navarro, and it is Wednesday, November 26th, right around 10:45 a.m. Carlos Ledo of the MIA All-Day Podcast is back with me. Your Miami Hurricanes are set to wrap up their regular season with a game Saturday at noon at Pittsburgh. It is a must-win game for the Miami Hurricanes if they're going to have any chance of making the college football playoff or making the ACC championship game. We are here to digest all of that. And Carlos, as we pick up here, as you can see, my background is a little bit different. I'm up in St. Augustine visiting my parents, staying here for the week. So it's nice and quiet. It's nice not to hear cars and honking and all kinds of noise.
Yeah, and have good internet service. Apparently, you need to do this more often from St. Augustine. Your parents shouldn't be the ones that are more technologically advanced than you are, but apparently that's the way it works. And good use of the word digestion during our Thanksgiving episode. Good
Yeah,
work.
as
Way to
you can,
slip that one in there.
yeah, you can see that there's a lot of colorful Thanksgiving attire here attached to our to the outline of your screen. You've mentioned here that you're a lover of beans, greens, potatoes, tomatoes,
Yep.
uh, and I'm asking you, what are you having for Thanksgiving this year? Because you and I are Cuban, and we don't have traditional turkey every single year, do we?
I do but that's not the only thing we have. Luckily, the last 2 years I've been hosting at my house. We have thankfully pulled the eject button on that one, and we are now going to two different Thanksgiving meals.
Mm.
First one being today. So I'm going to one today at my sister's house because my niece is working during Thanksgiving, and I believe my nephew as well. So she's going to be hosting at her house today for our side of the family, and then tomorrow we're going to my sister-in-law's house where she's hosting for my wife's side of the family. So I get to double dip, baby. I'm good. I'm feeling good about it. And my nephew just texted me. He's like, I'm on my way to pick up a 3-pound brisket from Apocalypse Barbecue that I didn't tell my mom about. And I was like, oh well, hey, I
Nice.
guess it's gonna be a long night tonight. A lot of tryptophan, a lot of grease flowing through the veins. I don't know. I'm gonna recover for tomorrow. It's gonna be intense.
You're having double Thanksgiving. That's nuts. Well, I am having boliche. My mother has decided that she is going to make the old Cuban classic boliche with some arroz moro, some yuca, and she's just not a fan of turkey, and usually gets like ham or something like that, something pork related. But she's going a little different this year with boliche. So for
Nice.
those
I
of
like
you
I like the
familiar,
change up.
yeah, those of you familiar with boliche, I don't have it very often unless I'm eating at like La Carreta or La Viña or something like that. And this time, mom's making it, so it's gonna be a nice little throwback. Um,
Yeah, the
speaking
only
of throw,
disappointment for me is I don't think either one of my sister or my sister-in-law are making any pierna. So
mhm.
little angry I'm not getting any crispy pork skin, but whatever.
I hope everybody back home is enjoying their Thanksgiving, is getting a chance to spend some time with family. It's good. I haven't seen my parents in a long time. Haven't spent this much time with them in a long time, so it's good for my children to spend some time around them since they're in their 70s now. So I hope everybody else is getting that opportunity as well. But there is football to be played, a lot of it over the next few days. And for Miami, from a Hurricanes perspective, the latest development, of course, was the college football playoff rankings that were released last night, Carlos. And Miami moved up a spot in the polls. They moved up from number 13 to number 12. They're still pretty much well behind Notre Dame, who they beat. And I don't know about you, brother, but I'm getting tired of the constant, hoopla, especially on the internet. Just Miami fans, Notre Dame fans, sort of going back and forth, arguing over this. I get it; it's an interesting talking point for people from both programs, but it just feels like it's a tired subject, and it's obvious that the selection committee does not give a damn that Miami beat Notre Dame to open the season.
I mean, I've been tired of it for 4 weeks before it even got to this point. I've been telling you that on the show. Like I really did not want to have the conversation anymore. I think I made it pretty clear over the last few weeks because it's out of their hands anyway. All they had to do, I said 4 weeks ago, we said 4 weeks ago, I think it was maybe 5 weeks ago. Whenever they lost to SMU, the only thing they could do was now put their heads down, grind, win, and win out in ways that were impressive enough to help them move up in the college football rankings, right? In the college football playoff rankings. I mean, I wouldn't consider this past Saturday's win particularly impressive, but it was a win on the road. They got the job done, and thankfully Utah had their own sort of circus show of a game that
Yeah.
made the committee like realize, hey, maybe these guys aren't as good as Miami, and bump them back. So ultimately, none of that matters, man. They need to beat Pitt. That's it. If they don't beat Pitt, then all of this is moot. There's no discussion to be had because they're out. They're out of everything, out of the race for the ACC, out of the race for the college football playoff, and now we're staring, the Russell Athletic Bowl, which I know doesn't exist anymore, dead in the face. Um, so ultimately, all that matters is the game in front of you, and I think that's what was sort of the tone of last week's show. I was just over it, man. I don't want to hear anymore about who deserves what or what. At the end of the day, they lost 2 games. They had control of their own destiny. They put it in the college football playoff committee's hands, and now we got to deal with it. We got to lay in the bed we made. But ultimately, all you could do is focus on each week and each game and do the best you can to get yourself back in there. Either you do it or you don't, but at least what you can control, you control. That's all you worry about because nothing else matters. Anything outside of your control, there's nothing you can do about.
And I think you and I both tried to warn Miami fans when the initial rankings came out that this was bad, that they were separated that far from Notre Dame, that potentially didn't matter what Miami did. Even if they won out, they were going to need a lot of help to get in.
Yeah.
And that's still the case. I mean, that just is the case. You're not getting in unless you crack the top 10 of these playoff rankings. And look, Alabama's playing Auburn this weekend in the Iron Bowl. We know that every time Alabama plays at Jordan Hare Stadium, it's a scary game.
Yep.
Has been even the last couple of years when Auburn's been down. Notre Dame's playing at Stanford. Oklahoma's at home, I think, against LSU, an LSU team that doesn't have a head coach and hasn't really been good all year. Ole Miss, Lane Kiffin, they got their, they got the whole Lane Kiffin circus, and we're going to talk more about
The
that.
Egg Bowl, yeah.
But they got the Egg Bowl against Mississippi State, and then Oregon, I think, plays Washington. Texas Tech and BYU both are like, I don't know, triple digit favorites over their opponents this week. So you're not going to get much in the way of help there. So really, to me, it comes down to, does Miami get the help that they need from Auburn? Do they get the help that they need from an LSU team that decides to show up and play Oklahoma? Does Ole Miss, sort of drop the ball? Do one of these SEC teams or Oregon potentially lay an egg this week? I don't know that that's going to happen, but I'll
Yeah, I
tell
don't
you
think,
this.
and I don't think anybody that far up like Ole Miss or Oregon, if they lose, I don't think that makes them drop below Miami anyway. I think the committee would probably keep them based on their body of work for the season ahead of Miami. I think the key is Alabama. If Alabama loses to Auburn, that's Miami's shot right there. Unless they decide BYU is not much better than Miami and they slide Miami above BYU, or does that then get Miami into the conversation to compare with Notre Dame because they're so close in the rankings?
Yeah, I think that's all been a bullshit story that they created
Yeah.
I think last night's, when you listen to the chair of the committee basically say, yeah, we compared Miami and Notre Dame and we still think Notre Dame is much better. Like, to me, that was their cover story. Like, this, believe me, like, they do not give a damn. Notre Dame
Yeah.
has no conference championship to play in. They're playing Stanford as, I don't know even know what the spread is, but it's going to be ridiculous. And it's like, it doesn't matter. Like, they're not passing Notre Dame. It's just not
Yeah,
going to happen.
and
Like,
you know what? It doesn't help for their case, for the committee's case.
right.
Miami had a tough game against Syracuse. Not tough, but I would say it wasn't as impressive. The 38-10 win, whereas Notre Dame just smoked them 70-7. And if
Hmm.
Notre Dame rolls in and beats Stanford by a similar score, having Miami having struggled against them as well, then the committee is going to come back with that evidence and say, "Look, this helps our case. We were right all
Right.
along. Look at us. This is a Miami that's this is Miami late in the season. This is how they compare to these teams. And look at what Notre Dame's doing. They're the better team right now, which is bullshit, but whatever."
Right. Well, I mean, but listen, I try to tell you, there's extreme prejudice in all this, and that's because Miami's in the ACC, and Notre Dame is always viewed as the Golden Boys. Doesn't matter what they do. In fact, before the season, I predicted Miami and Texas A&M. I swear to God, go back and look at my preseason predictions, that Miami and Texas A&M would beat Notre Dame. Notre Dame would run the table the rest of the way and get into the playoff, and that's exactly what's happening.
Yet you're
Because they,
sitting in St. Augustine at your parents' house instead of having won the lottery and sitting on a beach in the Bahamas. But hey, whatever, guy. Use your powers for what you will, I guess.
well, look, I also thought Miami would go 11-1, and their lone loss would be to SMU, and I was wrong. They lost a bad game at home to Louisville with 4
Yeah.
interceptions from Carson Beck. Now I'm totally off the boat. If you read my column today, I might as well just say it now. I picked Pittsburgh to win. I just think Miami knows they're a long shot. I think there's a lot of distractions in college football right now. As good as Miami has played, maybe the last couple of weeks offensively, sort of improving on that end. I thought they took a step back defensively against Virginia Tech. So I got Pittsburgh winning this weekend in overtime over Miami. I just think the cold, playing on the road, all that kind of stuff. We'll break that game down in a minute. We'll review Virginia Tech, but I want to keep the conversation here just on the top 25, the college football playoff rankings a little bit more, Carlos. I
Oh,
think.
here's another interesting thing with the college football
But
playoff. What if Michigan beats Ohio State?
yeah, they'll pass Miami. There's no
Yeah,
question. Yeah, and I would say if Vanderbilt beats Tennessee, it's the same thing. I think they will leapfrog Miami. I mean, Vanderbilt over Miami because Tennessee is ranked 19th right now in the college football playoff rankings. Pittsburgh is ranked 22nd. So I look, the SEC. This is the SEC and Big Ten Invitational, is what it is, and that's why I kind of went off last week. If you watched our episode last week, where I was just like, just going at it, and because it's an unfair system. Like, to me, there's no benefit for the ACC and the Big 12 to be a part of this playoff thing, because they're the only one who's getting in is a champion. There's no point to schedule tough
yeah,
out of conference games because you're not getting an at large. So if what we've seen through 2 seasons now is that the SEC and Big 10 are going to be the ones getting all the spots, what is the point of playing a tough out of conference schedule? What is the point of even scheduling Notre Dame?
right. And then what you've got then is, not only that, but then you've got another situation with the SEC. If Texas beats A&M,
Right.
what do they leapfrog Miami as well, even with the three losses, right? And there's really the only way to do this properly, I would say, is if you expand the field. Obviously, they're looking at expanding the field. They don't know if they're going to go to 16 or whatever the case may be. But when they expand the field, it would be wise to put a cap on the amount of teams a conference can get in. That
Yeah.
way, it's an even spread, and that way it's more fair across college football, right? But then obviously, now we're talking about the mid-tier teams within the conference, not necessarily the upper echelon of the conference. I think if each conference is limited to 4 teams, send your best four. That would make it more competitive, and then within that, you say maybe now we've got 12 teams, or 16, whatever the case may be, and then we expand the field maybe to 24, 28, whatever, 32, whatever they want to do. Then we can fill in additional teams from the G4 or G5 or whatever the case may be. I think the other thing, to me, the smarter thing to do also is, to keep fans invested and to keep players invested, especially now in this era of NIL and transfer portal and wanting to, quit on their team early to be able to transfer or go to the NFL or whatever the case may be. They need to create an NIT type system where it's not just, the college football playoff system, but now if they have a secondary system to get an NIT going and you incentivize the players to remain with their programs because they're getting cash payouts for the bowl games as they
Right.
move on, then that helps. And then you also incorporate the other bowls within that system so they generate revenue and ticket sales because there's interest there as well.
Right. I just think it's obvious that this is dominated by TV ratings, right? Like
Yeah.
Notre Dame, the fact that they have no question that they're getting in with 2 losses, considering their strength of schedule too, by the way, their combined opponents' records, the ones that they actually beat. Um, it just this is turning more into like the WWE than it is anything fair. And the guys is, hey, we're going to do this weekly show. We're going to talk about the rankings, and we're going to trot out a bunch of old people. They're going to say things like 6-7 and look really stupid on TV and make a joke of it all. And it's just, to me, they're lying to the public. If I were the ACC and the Big 12 and I were the G5, I would just say, hey, you know what, guys, let's go form our own league. Let's let the Big 10 and SEC have their own little championship, and we're just going to go ahead and play ourselves and not play them anymore. And we'll see how far they get. We'll see how far the Big 10 and the SEC get, because in reality, it's just a scam, and the TV networks are part of it. They're paying both of those leagues millions and millions and millions of dollars, and that's who they want on TV. They want the teams that they highlight on their broadcasts, because it's all about TV ratings, all about selling advertising and revenue, and that's the bottom line. And
Right.
yes, the ACC has a deal with the ESPN, but they are a secondary
Right.
market. The Big 12 is a secondary market. It's not the lead. The Big 10 and the SEC are the lead, and that's why the playoffs are rigged, and that's why it will always be rigged going forward, unless the leadership of those conferences and the other schools in college football that are sort of getting screwed out of the system say, hey, we're not gonna allow this to happen.
Right. So can you somehow bail out of that TV deal with ESPN and then go form your own network outside of them, can you then attract Notre Dame to be part of the conference and maybe use NBC as the pivot point, right? Where NBC and their network now with Peacock, because they can stream that,
Hmm.
they can stream additional games. Now you have, and Notre Dame being the flagship, let's say, of the ACC, they get a higher revenue split than everybody else because you're coming into our TV deal, and then using it that way, using those streaming platforms from NBC Universal to be able to, broadcast the games with for the ACC. I think that would make total sense. I also think you maybe need to add a couple more teams from the Big 12 to make it even more competitive in terms of strength of the conference. The issue then becomes, the main thing for the ACC is they like to be seen as an academic conference, right?
Right.
They pride themselves on being the top academic schools in college football outside of the Ivy League. So they'd need to flex with that a little bit. Although Baylor is a good academic institution, they would fit in another Texas program, and you could look at other teams within that Big 12 structure that you could bring over and make the conference even stronger.
Right. Well, it's going to be interesting to see what happens. The next TV deal is going to happen in 2029, which really isn't that far away, Carlos. And what's interesting to me is you look at the TV ratings this year. The Big Ten is down big time, and they got the best deal of them all. The SEC is basically dominating the TV ratings. Miami obviously draws a bunch of eyeballs. Notre Dame draws a bunch of eyeballs, and wouldn't you know it, those are the two teams they're talking about every single night on the broadcast.
And hey, speaking of WWE, I just watched a documentary on the NWO the other night when
Hmm.
Hulk Hogan flipped to the WCW and started the NWO craze. Wouldn't it be awesome if somehow Notre Dame, has this press conference like they're going to be a part of the Big Ten or SEC, and somebody drops the big leg on the SEC president, right, or the conference commissioner, and then you come over to the ACC, they put on the ACC NWO shirts, right, ACC World Order or something like that, and they become part of the conference. That would be amazing. I could see Marcus Freeman going from the baby face to the Hollywood Hogan type.
That would be hysterical. Sorry for the cough there. I was laughing and coughing at the same time. All right, I put up the ACC standings. Virginia, Pittsburgh, and SMU are at the top of the list. Obviously, last week Pittsburgh went into Atlanta, knocked off Georgia Tech, and basically derailed their playoff hopes and hopes of making the ACC championship game. So Virginia and SMU control their destiny. They win on Saturday. They get to the ACC championship game. Virginia plays Virginia Tech at home. I think I don't even know what the spread is. It's a lot. I think it's 10.5. And then SMU is on the road at Cal, who just fired their head coach, Justin Wilcox.
Yeah.
So both of those teams seem destined to make it to the ACC championship game. But if one of them loses and Miami takes care of business, then it comes down to, does Duke lose to Wake Forest? Believe it or not, that's whether or not Miami will make the ACC championship game.
So
Duke
the
controls
Hurricanes'
it.
destiny would be in Manny Diaz's hands, is what you're saying?
Basically, is what
Oh
I'm
God.
saying. As you look
Oh
at the
God.
standings here, and I'm gonna throw up in my
I'm
mouth,
gonna
and
throw up.
as you can see the standings, I'm gonna include here. I'm gonna upload the scenarios for the playoffs. I just got to find the right button here. Here it is. All right, Carlos, I'm still struggling even after all this time. This is Miami's ACC tiebreaker scenario. These are all the ways Miami can make the ACC championship game. The simplest: Virginia loses, Duke loses, and SMU wins, and then they play SMU. They beat Pittsburgh. SMU loses to Cal, Duke loses, UVA loses, and an NC State wins. That's another complicated way there. How about that? A win, an SMU loss, a Duke loss, a UVA loss, and a UNC win, and a Syracuse win. It's crazy. I mean, there's like 8,000 different methods here to get in the ACC championship
Yeah, I didn't
game.
realize we had to do trigonometry to figure out who the hell's going to the ACC title game.
Yeah, but it's the reality. It's what happens when you lose at home to Louisville. That's the game that's going to haunt them because they shouldn't have lost. As good as Jeff Brom is, uh, shouldn't have beaten you at home. You're at home. That's the place you got to win. SMU, I'm a little bit more accepting of that because SMU is 14-1 or whatever the hell they are in the conference in the 2 years they've been here, and Rhett Lashley is a good coach and he had a good game plan. And sometimes you're going to lose on the road,
Yep.
but it is what it is. Anyway, those of you wondering, those are all the permutations, and that's fresh off of ACC.com. That's all on the website, on the official website, ACC.com. You can see every single scenario there.
But note,
So
they all start with the same thing. They've got to win.
yes, yes, correct. So anyway, that's that. Let's get into the Virginia Tech game here for a second, Carlos. You mentioned earlier you weren't overly impressed. It was 27-10 at one point. I tuned in. I want to say mid second quarter, and I saw that they were up pretty comfortably and in control, but they weren't dominating. They weren't going down the field with big plays. And I think you and I basically feel the same way, that you have to have an explosive offense in college football to really give yourself a chance. If every drive has to be 11 plus plays, 75 yards, you're not gonna impress people, right? You're not gonna help your scenario out very much. And I think that's one thing that unfortunately has been lacking this year with this offense.
Yeah, but you know what? It wasn't that so much for me. It was they were in the first half really rolling on offense. They looked good. They weren't putting up a ton of points or were very explosive. They had some nice plays, but what they were running was different. It was outside the box. They were using more
Mm-hmm.
wildcat stuff, some motions, different formations, things that we had asked for. They ran a diamond formation early in the first quarter near the goal line, which is basically when you have an inverted wishbone in the backfield out of the shotgun, out of the pistol. Oklahoma State really made that famous under Mike Gundy, which, by the way, was I texted Manny a few weeks ago when Mike Gundy got fired and was like, "Listen, if Dawson leaves, this is a dude you got to hire as the offensive coordinator, bring him in as the senior offensive consultant." I love Mike Gundy's offense. Anyway, that's what they used. It was innovative. It looked good, but again, like always, what I say with Shannon Dawson, the problem is he doesn't have any answers in the second half when the defense adjusts. Early on in the game, Virginia Tech was playing a lot of cover four. They were keeping everything in front of them. They weren't blitzing as much, and then the Hurricanes were just doing what they wanted offensively. They had to work for it. They had to drive down the field. They weren't getting huge plays to be able to make one play scores, but they were driving and scoring because Virginia Tech had no answer for it. They were just trying to keep everything in front of them, and they couldn't. In the
Right.
second half, they adjusted. They started bringing pressure. They started adjusting their coverage on the back end a little bit, confusing and mixing, and they slowed the offense down. The reason for that is Shannon Dawson, when something isn't part of your offensive scheme ordinarily, and you implement it for a week, then you have no counters, right? It's first level thinking. Your first order thinking is, okay, here's the play, we're going to run it, it's working good. But what happens when they adjust? What's your counter to the adjustment? They had none, so then they had to go back and scale back to what they normally do. And that's the difference between grab bag play calling and scheme. And this is why I have a lot of friends who coach high school football who love the wing tee. The reason they love the wing tee and they run it for years is those players know it inside out, and you have your initial play set. When they counter you, they adjust. You have a counter to their adjustment. There's always an answer for the defense's solution for the previous problem. So what you want to do is have a new problem for the defense and have them counter that, and then you counter back to something else. So it's a scheme. That's why it's called a scheme. It's strategically setting up plays as you move along and having answers for what the defense does to you to try and shut down that initial offensive scheme, the offensive play set that you came out with. And that's the problem with the Hurricanes and with Shannon Johnson specifically. He has these great plays, these plays that look great initially, but in every second half, there's always a lull. We talked about it early in the season. There's a lull because there's no counter. You don't know how to
Yeah.
adjust. You can't, and he's not also not anticipating what that adjustment by the defense might be so he can have those counters ready to go. And that's the problem. That's what they ran into in the second half. And it took a last second touchdown to get the score to 34-17 to try and make it look a little more impressive than it was throughout the second half.
Miami's defense did not play exceptionally well, and you could see, in total yards, I think there were 18 more total yards offensively than Virginia Tech in this game. Really, the Hokies are one of the few teams that have had success running the ball against Miami this season. Guys were sort of out of some gaps, took bad angles. You played a lot of young guys in this game because of the injuries. And you end up losing Jacoby Thomas, I think 13 snaps into that game. So you're a little younger in the secondary. You could see some of the breakdowns that they had later in the game when Virginia Tech was able to move the ball through the air. But getting back to the offense for a quick second, I know they had a play where they lost 17 yards on a snap by Brockermeyer, who's not, we haven't been the biggest fans of his all season. And then you had a 6-yard loss by Keelan Marion on an attempted trick play there. And so that affects the running game. They only finished with a 2.8 yard average. But Pringle 3.5 yards a carry, Fletcher 3.2 yards a carry.
Yep.
Just not the same explosiveness that we saw a week earlier. So to me, that's part of the reason why I picked Pittsburgh to win, because Pittsburgh's a much better team than Virginia Tech. They can score points. Miami is still banged up. I don't care what Mario says on the radio or in his press conferences about injuries. It's quite serious. Where he says, "Yeah, this guy's banged up. We're gonna get him back." And CJ Daniels has played what in the last 3 weeks, even though he's been in uniform, nothing, right?
Yeah.
So whatever injuries guys are dealing with, if they're not on the field, that's your answer. It doesn't matter what Mario says. Fletcher was barely on the field as well. Yes, he got 6 carries and he caught a couple balls, but not a heavy workload for him either. So this is the end of the season. It's guys are banged up. It's gonna happen. They're gonna rest their bodies. But now it's a must-win game on Saturday against a Pittsburgh team that Carlos, quite frankly, is just a lot better than I think
Yeah.
a lot of the teams Miami's faced this year.
Well, and here's the thing: Pittsburgh is definitely going to come in with a strategy to shut down the run. That's going to be their thing. They want Miami to try and throw the ball in the colder weather. Aside from the fact that they feel like if they can shut down the line of scrimmage and control it and force Carson Beck to beat them, that they feel they can have him make mistakes. He's played he has the last couple games he's played really well, really effectively, really efficiently. You saw the stat line there against Virginia Tech, over 300 yards, 4 touchdowns, 80% completion. Looks great, and hopefully he can continue that moving into this Pittsburgh game. But Pittsburgh's looking to make this into a slog, right? They want to control the line of scrimmage. They want to see if Miami can beat them with Carson Beck, and then they're going to do the same thing on the other side. They want to run the ball, control it, and then have their quarterback make big plays off play action.
You look at some of the comparisons here. The green is good. Okay, Pittsburgh rushing yards per attempt defensively 2.7. Miami's ranked 75th right now in yards per rushing attempt. We know the running game just hasn't been good. It's been average, very, very, very average for the entire season. And really, when Carson Beck struggles, this entire offense struggles. It's
Yep.
heavily reliant on him to make the right decisions, to not turn the ball over, and for the defense to play well. And the thing that has me worried going into this game for Miami is that the defense is not playing well and they're banged up. And so that's my biggest concern. We're going to flip it over now and take a look at the Miami defense versus Pittsburgh's offense. We'll look at some of those numbers and what stands out to you there, Carlos, when you see those initial numbers.
Yeah. Pittsburgh only rushing for 124 a game.
Mm-hmm.
That's difficult for them. And Miami's rush defense usually is very good. They've been really good over time, but I think the last couple of weeks they've had a hiccup here and a hiccup there. Especially this past week against Virginia Tech, where they came out specifically to run the football. For me, also the interception rate there for Pittsburgh, 3.3%. That's low.
Yep.
They don't turn the ball over a lot in the passing game. So that's a concern also for Miami. You want to go into that environment and try and flip the field and get short fields as much as you can to try and help your offense score as many points as possible and take away possessions from the opposing team. And if the other team's not big on turning the ball over, it makes it that much more difficult.
The one thing Pittsburgh does not do well besides run the football consistently is protect the quarterback.
Right.
They give up a lot of sacks, and to me, that's what this entire game comes down to. Can Miami's defensive line dominate the way that they need to dominate? They had 5 sacks last game, but still, that was a game that you still felt like, okay, if Carson Beck turns the ball over, could be a 1-score game. I mean, they kept it at 2 scores pretty much the whole game, but it felt like all you need is one mistake, and Virginia Tech's in it. Pittsburgh's a much better team, and they do, create interceptions and score pick sixes. You saw it last week against Georgia Tech. They had a pick 6 for a touchdown. So to me, it's a very dangerous opponent. They're 8-3 for a reason. They're well coached. Pat Narduzzi knows what he's doing. He's got playmakers on offense, different guys that can score and make plays. And so I wanted to just take a look quickly at some of their offensive guys. You can squint your eyes there and take a peek at some of the guys on offense that they have there. Mason Heinschel, the freshman, has played really, really well. 14 touchdowns, I think 6 interceptions to this point. Turner, their running back, has been solid, averaging over 5 yards a carry. So, yes, Desmond Reed is banged up for him, but Turner's been a nice little alternative. You saw I think he had the game-clinching touchdown run there against Georgia Tech, if you watched the end of that game. So, and then defensively, I think they're a pretty solid team there as well. Let's take a quick look at what Pitt has on defense. Rasheem Biles is their stud at linebacker, makes a ton of plays for them. You look at the number of interceptions there. A lot of guys got picks. Got some guys with some sacks. I mean, it's not as good a defense as Narduzzi's had all in his entirety there at Pitt,
Mhm.
Carlo, but they're solid and they've got playmakers and guys that create turnovers, and I think that matters.
Yeah, and I think for Miami, obviously it seems like they have the advantage with the pass rush against Pitt's offensive line. The interesting thing to see is, how can Pitt counter that? And with the injuries in the secondary, how does Miami handle Pitt's passing game?
Hmm.
Which I'm sure is going to be quick passes, trying to get the ball out quickly and limiting the effectiveness of Mesidor and Bain to try and get the ball out and have the receivers make some plays. Can the Hurricanes be, solid enough on the back end and come up and make tackles and not give up big plays?
And it'll be interesting to see what happens in that game on Saturday, kickoff at noon. A lot of other football games, obviously important to Miami fans as well. I'm sure you can look up the complete schedule, but I would say you definitely want to tune into that Virginia Tech game Saturday night at 7 on ESPN. And I think SMU, I'm not sure what time their kickoff is at Cal. It might be a night game as well. And then the Duke Wake Forest game. Those are all pertinent to Miami if they win. If they don't win, then what does it matter?
Or
Uh,
listen, enjoy the Hurricanes game on Saturday. Fill yourself up with turkey, leftover turkey sandwiches, or if you have bedna, which I'm not having, bless you if you are. You're more you have something to be thankful for, something I don't have this year. Um, Enjoy it, get stuffed, and then pass out. Let the tryptophan come in and ride the dragon one more night, and then just wake up Sunday morning and see what happened. That's the best way to do it, man.
Carlos, I wanted to shift the conversation. We're going to get to the mailbag here in a couple of minutes, but I wanted to shift the conversation. You bring up Thanksgiving, and I wonder if this Thanksgiving, how many Miami fans are thankful that they're not in the shoes that the Florida Gators and Florida State Seminoles are in. They're two of their biggest rivals because I don't know if you noticed, but the Seminoles announced they're keeping Mike Norvell after the
Great decision,
season.
by the way. That's fantastic.
5-6 record right now, and really a lot of this just comes down to one thing: his buyout. The Gators, of course, fired their head coach. They're 3-8. We've talked about it quite a bit on the show that Miami's sort of dropping the ball on a golden opportunity to take over the state and be dominant. But when you look at the big picture, Carlos, are you happy with Mario Cristobal? If they win Saturday but get denied a college football playoff spot and they finish 10-2, don't get to the ACC championship game because unfortunately they don't get the help. Where are you going to be feeling about Mario Cristobal and the job he's done here in 4 years?
So it's mixed emotions, right? Because me as a fan, you always want to see the Hurricanes be elite and be back to what they used to be. But and the more years go on, the longer it's been since they've been elite, and it's just being able to have back-to-back 10-win seasons. To me, is an accomplishment. It's clearly the program's clearly moving in the right direction, and Mario's been self-aware enough, I think, to make the adjustments in terms of personnel and even coaches over the few years that he's been here to try and improve the program year to year. But there's just always that one shit the bed moment. So the thing
Mhm,
is, you're excited, but you feel like the last 2 years have been sort of a missed opportunity. And
mhm,
especially when you look at a program like Indiana, where Signetti's come in and just in 2 years, they've been in the college football playoff conversation 2 years in a row, made it last year, probably going to make it again this year. They may be, one of the top four seeds if they don't lose at the end here. And they have a Heisman candidate in Fernando Mendoza, and you're thinking, wow, why can't we have these things, right? And
right.
we should be Indiana. We should be better than Indiana based on what we've done in terms of recruiting in the portal and things of that nature. And it's been missed opportunities. But that being said, listen, man, I'd much rather have these conversations. I'd much rather have these frustrations about missed opportunities than being back at 6-6, 7-5, getting my nuts kicked in by Middle Tennessee, losing in the Orange Bowl to Virginia, 48-0, being destroyed by Clemson, 55-0 at home, having all these awful memories. We all have short memories when it comes to these things, but this has been happening for over 20 years, and to have back-to-back 10-win seasons, it's not what you want ultimately. It's not the end goal. It's not the big prize that you've been hoping for, but it's on the right path. Um, but now the progress needs to continue. You don't want to see a dip in it. You want to see that train continue to be moving forward and make progress from year to year. And hopefully next year, it's not a conversation of, man, are we getting in or aren't we getting in? How do we get into the ACC title game? With all these scenarios, it's, hey, we're locked in. Now let's see what we do in the playoff.
I threw up a graphic here that shows all of the head coaches, the current head coaches in college football, based on their school win percentage, meaning the schools that they're coaching right now. It also includes career win percentage, the salary. Obviously, everything is in the millions there. What the buyout would be to get rid of them. Did all this research yesterday because I wanted to see, where does Mario honestly rank amongst his peers, right? I mean, we can sit here and have a conversation, Carlos, about, should they be better? Uh, should they have already won the ACC and made the playoff by now? It's debatable, and it's something I'm sure we'll talk about going into the off season when this regular season wraps up. But I think right now, when you just study the landscape of where everybody else is in college football and say, well, where does Mario have the program from a winning percentage perspective? 23rd best coach among all active head coaches and active win percentage. You can see everybody listed in front of him, and you can see everybody listed right behind him. Manny Diaz right behind him, and what he's accomplished at Duke in 2 seasons in terms of win percentage. Okay. Brent Venables, who left Clemson to go coach Oklahoma. Miami and Oklahoma viewed as very similar programs, from a big, broader national perspective. He's got one more win, one fewer loss than Brent Venables does. Eli Drinkwitz, who's widely considered, a really good coach, what he's done at Missouri, listed below that. Um, Obviously, there's some interesting numbers there. Scott Frost is getting credit for some of the wins he had at UCF before.
Same with
Um,
Rich Rodriguez there at West Virginia.
at West Virginia, right? But I wanted to give it a fair sort of shake here, and you can see Signetti, Ryan Day, Dan Lanning, Kirby Smart, Mike Elko. Dabo's got 2 national championships. Marcus Freeman played for one last year. Kalen DeBoer obviously played for a national championship a couple years ago. And then you get to Lane Kiffin, who is the talk of the college football world because he's about to become the highest paid coach in college football, which is really a joke. The only thing he's accomplished in the 14 years he's been coaching is win 2 Conference USA championships at FAU. He hasn't won anything otherwise. In fact, this would be the first year he'd ever get his team into the postseason in terms of the playoffs. If they beat, Mississippi State in the Egg Bowl. So my question to you is, Carlos, when you see this list and you see the names comparable, do you think Miami made a mistake going to Mario a few years ago?
I don't think so. I don't think so because this was more than just finding the next best head coach. I think it was a marriage between the program, its past culture, a guy that obviously has a lot of love for the program based on his playing experience and coaching experience here at the University of Miami, and wanting to bring someone in that truly understood what it meant to be a Hurricane during the glory years. And you marry that with the success he had at Oregon. Yes, he didn't bring any national championships, but he won the Rose Bowl. He had success there. He was great in recruiting, and you hope that would transition and translate over to Miami. And listen, we talked about it early on. What he had coming in here in terms of talent was not the greatest. He had to rip this thing down, break it down to the studs, get the foundation rebuilt, and start moving the program forward. And he's done that the last couple of years. Now, the ultimate question is, clearly you want things to happen and turn around quicker than they have. You see a guy like Signetti, you see a guy like Mike Elko at Texas A&M, the turnaround he's had. Kalen DeBoer, his success at Washington, and now starting to bring that over to Alabama. Of course, that was a machine that he stepped into. But then you see guys like Rhett Lashley at SMU, what he's done there.
Right.
Jeff Brom at Louisville, the guys you're directly competing against, and they're being measured against within the conference, and you don't see that same level of success, and that's the concern. But now that they've got this sort of pipeline of talent established, and they've clearly made it known, or actually sort of maybe cracked the code in terms of what they want in the portal. What do they do moving forward? Now we got the defense solved. We got a new defensive coordinator. Now we've got pretty much what we want on offense in terms of, coordinator if he remains, and the type of system we want to run. Can we be more consistent with those things? What do we do to improve and move forward? And now, for me, the goal moving forward for them shouldn't be anything having to be related to the college football playoff. It's just win the conference. win the ACC. That should be the main goal. That would be a huge step forward because it would be the first time the team does it. They've never done it before, and that guarantees a playoff spot. So ultimately, the off-season programming, the off-season focus should be on how can we be the best program in the ACC and win the ACC championship.
And in the end, that's all that matters. We went over
Right.
the college football playoff. You're not getting the benefit of the doubt and getting an at-large bid. So if you don't win the league, you're not getting in.
Right.
Just
They could have
it's the
lost to
way it
Florida,
is.
Florida and Notre Dame, and been undefeated in the ACC, and that would have been better off, right? That would have been a better
Right.
10-2 than ultimately than a 10-2 beating Notre Dame in Florida
Correct. If they were 10-2 losing to Notre Dame in Florida, we know that now, and it's funny because we brought up these hypotheticals
at the beginning of
uh,
the season.
at the beginning of the season. But if it isn't evident and obvious to you now, the college football playoff committee doesn't give a shit what your record is. What they care about is what conference you come from.
Right.
And so even by BYU, look at BYU. They're 11 or 10-1 right now. They're going to be 11-1, and they're getting pushed out, and they deserve to get in ahead of Miami, in my opinion. They're 11-1. Why not? Why not give them the benefit of the doubt? They've only lost one game to a team that's ranked in the top 5.
Right.
Why should they be shoved out? They've got top 25 wins. They beat Utah, right? They beat other teams in their conference. Why should they get shut out if they don't win the league? They're not as deserving because Alabama can't win on their home field against Oklahoma, or because Notre Dame is Notre Dame. Like, why should they get shut out? I like, so to me, I'm not just about, hey, this is unfair to Miami. I think this is unfair to everybody who's not in the Big Ten or the SEC or Notre Dame. And I think, you know, if the thing is stacked against you, if it's always going to be stacked against you, then all Miami needs to care about going forward is win the ACC every
Right.
single year.
Yeah.
That's it. Just win it every single year,
The
and
best
don't
thing to
worry
do
about
is,
anything else.
yeah, have an understanding of what the rules are. You know what the rules are. You know how it is. Now, I'm not talking about the rules as they are written. I'm talking about the rules as they are actually put into use, right? So you know what you're
Right.
up against. You know what the deck is, how it's stacked against you. So then you've got to take advantage of that and make everything about winning the ACC championship, just like Narduzzi said. Narduzzi said he didn't care. He didn't care if he
Right.
lost to Notre Dame 100 or nothing because it wouldn't make a difference in terms of where he wants to get to ultimately. He wants to win the ACC and get in the playoff. That's the way it works. So I think Miami needs to build themselves up to be able to compete within the ACC and then have an eye towards the playoff later on. And does that mean they adjust to scheduling? Does that mean they change the types of players that they have or the system a little bit on offense? Whatever they do, maybe, maybe not. But ultimately, what they need to do is look at themselves and identify what has been the problem when we get into conference play the last couple of years, and why are we losing these games that we should not be losing in conference? What are we doing wrong? How are these teams attacking us, and how are they taking advantage of us? And I think a lot of it has to do with maybe the hype built up into the early season
Yep.
coming into conference play. And like I've said, they've got a lot of tape on you. And if you're not adjusting, if you're not evolving, and you're not getting better by the end of the season, then ultimately you're gonna get the door shut in your face, which is what has happened.
Yeah. I think it goes back to Mario and his leadership and the way that he coaches on game day. They made a big deal about these Notre Dame games. Now listen, to Mario's credit, he says all the right things. It doesn't matter. We need to go 1-0 every single week. So, but the bottom line is, I think it's a standard that has to be set at the beginning of the season. Maybe he needs to do what Pat Narduzzi just did and say,
Yeah.
"Who gives a shit about the non-conference? Who cares?
Well,
They're not going to give a damn."
right. And even in you've never heard Mario come out in any of his press conferences, even preseason or leading into the season, like the most important thing is winning the ACC. He has not said that. What
Right.
he said is like, all right, each game is each game, and like, we're excited about these opportunities to play bigger, and he wants to move up in the rankings. And the exciting being ranked number 2, but ultimately, what he should be his messaging should be, that's all. This is great. All this is part of the journey, but none of this matters if we don't win the conference championship. Our focus is being the best team in the ACC and winning the conference championship. That's what we are about, and having that single-mindedness.
Really should be that way. All right, let's get to the mailbag, Carlos, because we've got a bunch of questions here as we head into the season finale, the regular season finale. This first one is from one Coach White on Twitter. Unfortunately, you guys are right about us making the playoffs. Number one, do you think Jordan Lyle is purposely not playing so that he can redshirt? Number two, is it too soon to redo Heatherman's contract? We made that mistake with Guidry. And number three, the position groups development in the rank the position groups development in the last year. Let's start with number one and Jordan Lyle. I think he's probably headed to the transfer portal. I'm not
Yeah,
reporting that. I'm just saying I think that's probably what's going to end up happening with Jordan Lyle. I just don't think he's been passed up on the depth chart by guys younger than him. And I'm looking right now, obviously the injury did not help. He's already played 6 games, so he can't redshirt. I think he's not playing just because either he's not healthy or he's just not playing well enough, and the
right.
coaches are going somewhere else.
Yeah, and I don't think that's his call. I think that's the coach's call.
Yeah. Number 2, is it too soon to redo Heatherman's contract? Obviously, reacting to the poor defensive performance. Listen. The bottom line is this guy has made Miami's defense so
Yeah,
much better, and he's so much better of a teacher. The players are not confused whatsoever. We're not seeing the same breakdowns that we saw, under Guidry in terms of guys being confused with teams throwing motion and not knowing who to cover. That's not why they gave up so many yards against Virginia Tech.
and not only that, but sometimes you guys forget this. There's good coaches on the other side too, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's the problem with Virginia Tech was they came in specifically wanting to run the football. That's what they wanted to do because that's what they were best at, to try and control the clock and shorten the game and give themselves a shot against Miami. Not only that, but the most important thing is you're playing 11 on 11,
Right.
right? Because now you have to account for the quarterback in the run game, which you normally don't have to do, which frees an extra defender to come in the box, right? So that makes things even more complicated, right? Defensively, plus the injuries. Heatherman, they didn't destroy Miami. They didn't score 40 points, even though they had a lot of yards and they scored a lot of points. Miami held them to 17 points, and when
Right.
the defense needed to, they shut the door. So that's the
Mm-hmm.
things you want to see. There's going to be bad games. There's going to be games where you're not at your best. You're not at your sharpest. Ultimately, do you get the job done? Are you effective? Had that been last year's defense, Virginia Tech might have scored 40 points on us.
All right, rank the position group's development in the last year. I would say defensive line is number 1 because I've seen guys come off the bench and be effective. I think Justin Scott's improved. I've seen Ahmad Moten improve. I've seen some of the young edge rushers get in the game and make plays happen. Armando Blunt is another one. I think wide receivers probably number 2. Obviously, you've seen Malachi Tony, but now you're seeing
Mm-hmm.
Upshaw. There's been flashes of Josh Moore. They've done a good job, I think, with that position, making it better. Running back, I mean, Pringle has done well. Um, I don't know, Carlos, who are your top 3, and would you say
I would
anybody's
agree.
taking
I
a
would
step
also
back?
consider maybe the DBs because you've got
Yeah.
I know it's not development in terms of like, wow, we recruited these guys and gotten better over time, but I think Fitzgerald has played well. He's come in there. Damari Brown's played better than he has, I think, over the last couple of years. You've got guys that have gotten better, and you substituted guys that were out with injuries and plugged other guys in, and then they played well and still maintained the integrity of the secondary.
Yeah, I think those are the groups that headline. I think offensive line, we'll see, right? I mean, they've Okunlola's come in and he's taken some steps. He's played well, but McCoy at times has been disappointing. I don't know. We're going to see what they do with the offensive line and whether or not how many of those guys, SJ Alafatuli, they're going to need them next year. They're going to need those freshmen that come in here to come in here and make an impact, or they're going to have to do a good job finding somebody in the portal.
Yeah,
Because
offensive line and quarterback are going to be the two main things they have to be concerned about next season.
Yeah. This is from David Tedla. If Notre Dame is so highly regarded, why aren't they ranked higher in the college football playoff? Would a higher Notre Dame ranking boost Miami's resume? It wouldn't because they got 2 losses, and that's why they're not ranked higher.
Yep.
Bottom
And the
line.
committee wouldn't give a shit
No. It
about
says
Miami.
Notre Dame plays 6 ACC games. If they were in the ACC, they'd be in a 4-way tie for first. Wouldn't they miss the ACC title game despite a head-to-head win over Pitt? The irony. I don't know if Notre Dame, like, obviously we're assuming that they would get to 8 games. What they would do in those other 2 games, who would they play? I don't know. But look, the bottom line is they're not in the conference, and they're reaping the benefits of it. They're
Yep.
reaping the benefits of playing of the ACC every year because that gives them credibility. If the ACC killed that relationship, I'm very interested to see who Notre Dame would schedule because it's obvious the Big Ten and the SEC schools aren't doing it.
Yeah, to me, Notre Dame is like that guy that has that woman on the side for years. He comes over. They do their thing. She cooks him breakfast, and then he leaves and he says, "Yeah, today's the day I'm going to tell my wife," but he never does. And that's what the ACC is dealing with. They're dealing with just a man that just won't commit. And the ACC has to have more respect for itself. It has to look itself in the mirror and say, "Damn it, I'm good enough. I'm pretty enough. I deserve more."
Our buddy Asher Wildman from Spectrum News says, to you and Carlos, thanks again for an amazing year of perspective and great takes on the Canes. So much attention is always on players. Do you anticipate a lot of turnover on the staff aside from the offensive coordinator, defensive coordinator? Seems like Mario has a solid cast to keep. Happy Turkey Day, go Canes. I don't get the sense that Mario wants to get rid of anybody on this
Right.
staff. I think they've kind of settled in now in year 4 to having some level of consistency. Does that mean there won't be changes or turnover? There always is changes and turnover in college sports. There's always somebody looking to get a promotion somewhere to make more money. And so I would not be surprised if somebody left for a better job. Now, Corey Heatherman is the key to me, him and Jason
Hmm.
Taylor. If there's a way to keep both of those guys in their positions, then you're good. I think everything else, give or take, I mean, obviously Alex Mirabal is tied at the hip with Mario, so he's not going anywhere. Um, Outside of that, I don't know. Kevin Beard is a hurricane. He probably doesn't want to leave. I think he's done a good enough job, obviously, with Malachi Tony and some of those receivers to keep his job and not have Mario want to change him out. So, what do you say?
Right. So for me, I think the concern would be maybe losing Jason Taylor because I think he's done such a good job with that defensive line, and it gets highlighted week after week the technique
Yeah.
that these guys play with, and the way these guys have improved over time, Mesdor and Bain specifically. That some team, maybe not even a college team, an NFL team might want to bring him in as a defensive line coach and have him on their sideline because he's earned it. He's shown that he's capable as a coach. Or another college football team would say, listen, we need a big time defensive line coach, or we want to make you the defensive coordinator and you coach defensive line as your position area. And we want to, give you a promotion. But I think the good thing about Jason is he's not money motivated because he
Hmm.
made enough of it during his career.
Right.
He's coaching for the love of the game. And I think he loves being in South Florida so much that if they tried to give him a job somewhere else, it would have to be something ridiculous, an incredible offer, or he really would want to take that next step in his career to make the move. It wouldn't be about money or being at a bigger program. So it would have to be a really sweet deal in terms of career move for him.
I
The other
still
thing,
I still don't know why the Dolphins haven't called him, but go ahead.
because it's the Dolphins, man. The Dolphins don't do anything that makes sense. We have Mark Anthony. We have Timu Mark Anthony running around on the sidelines as the head coach for the Miami Dolphins. We have Tua, I don't know my name, playing quarterback, for the Miami Dolphins. It doesn't make sense. Chris Greer just got fired, man. Just now. The
I just got
15
him
years of
started on the
disaster.
Dolphins,
The
everybody.
15 years of disaster this guy's been associated with and running the
You think
show with.
Carlos is fired up about the Canes? Wait till he gets to the
Yeah,
Dolphins.
I don't want to talk about this. But hey, let's go Heat. Positionless basketball. Spo's killing everybody. All right. Do you know that the Miami Heat, I'm just throwing this in there. I'm going to answer the final part of the question. But do you know that the Miami Heat are setting the least amount of screens, not just in the NBA this season, but over the last 30 years?
Yeah.
They're screening only on 12% of their possessions. That is incredible.
More shots, more chances to score points, Carlos. That's what I told my little league rec team at Cooper City, and we still couldn't win. But
And
what can you do?
their pace is a full second faster than the run and gun Phoenix Suns with Steve Nash.
Yeah,
Listen,
it's
all
fun.
right.
It's fun basketball.
Listen, I don't want to school you on other sports because I could do that too all day. But hey, just dropping that in there. And to me, the concern offensively is I think Shannon Dawson. If I were Shannon Dawson, I would probably look at making a move somewhere else because he wants to capitalize, become a head coach somewhere else. If there's an opportunity to jump ship, he should have jumped last year after coming off the Cam Ward year. He had all the cards now. He saw that there's a dip now, and he knows now he's not going to be able to get another Cam Ward in there. It's going to be
Right.
very hard to do that. So does he now make the leap to another program, either a bigger SEC program or somewhere to be an offensive coordinator, or does he take a G4 G5 lower level, FBS program head coach
And who
job?
replaces him, Carlos?
Listen, I'm all for Mike Gundy.
All
I think
right.
that's the kind of offensive system. It plays well. It's air raid, but he does air raid the right way. His run game schemes are incredibly solid. He's the one, like I said, that popularized that diamond formation that he used a lot with this guy that ended up getting the quarterback that really ran that to perfection was almost a Heisman candidate. Was the guy with that ended up being drafted by the Cowboys, who was a 27-year-old that played minor league baseball. You know what I'm talking about?
Yes, I just can't remember his name.
I don't remember his name either, but you guys will Google it and figure it out.
Old quarterback is what his name is.
Yeah, and that, or you know what, the popular name that continues to pop up every year, Ken Dorsey.
Well, we'll see. We'll see what happens if Dawson is still in charge here after this
And I think
season.
Dorsey honestly would be a great choice, not to because obviously of his ties to the Hurricanes, but he's a quarterback developer. Cam Newton had his best years under Ken Dorsey as his quarterback coach. Josh Allen developed under Ken Dorsey and became the quarterback that he was uh, with the Bills. So, I'd like to see that. And that's the one thing that this team is lacking. Dawson, to me, again, okay as a play caller, bad as a quarterback developer.
All right, Stephen Thunder says, "Will we get a Sweet 16 as the next playoff setup?" Stephen, I don't know what the next playoff setup is. I just know the greedy bastards at with Fox and ESPN and the Big Ten and SEC will have the most spots in it, so it doesn't matter. Um, this is from Rashawn RB242 on Twitter. Is there any benefit to playing Notre Dame if when you beat them head to head, it doesn't matter as much and they get more credit for beating up on the bottom of the ACC than the top teams in the ACC do?
We answered that.
Rashawn, you're speaking my point, brother.
Yeah, we answered that. To me, there's still a benefit because one, in terms of recruiting, that helps. Two, for the fan base, rivalries, you love to see it. Everybody here loves to see Miami beat Notre Dame and Miami play Notre Dame. So let's not act like we don't like it. In
Carlos, let
terms
me
of
ask you this. What if all of a sudden you just started scheduling Big 12 teams?
okay,
Play the I don't know, the BYUs, the Utahs. They do have Utah on the schedule, by the way, in a future matchup in Vegas, if I'm not mistaken. Um, Play some of the Big 12 teams.
I mean, for positioning in the college football playoff, probably better. But
Yeah.
does that move the needle with the fan base? This apathetic fan base. We know we're all very hyped up online, but if you've got a Baylor rolling into Hard Rock Stadium, I guarantee you not everybody's going to be in that seat by the time kickoff happens, and the stadium's probably not going to be sold out. You've got a Notre Dame rolling in. You see what that does to the stadium, the electric nature of the stadium. The fan base is riled up. It brings back memories of the rivalry. Those are things that are beyond the benefit of the college football playoff. You want your fan base excited. You want those marquee games. You want those games as a program that you can hang your hat on. Whether or not it turns into something more than that, at least for the experience of that game and in recruiting battles, I think that's positive.
All right. This is from PTSD Hurricane Maniac Kane.
Me too.
Miami screen game will cost them the game. Dawson will lean too much on it, and Pitt will be all over it. Agree or disagree?
I don't think that's going to be the issue. I don't think the screen game is the issue. I think the issue is if Miami can't run the football and they're dependent on Carson Beck to beat Pitt, does he make the right decisions? Does he force it? Is he able to handle the colder weather? I know people are going to shit all over that in the comments about colder weather. Listen, man, it is what it is. When you're down here in South Florida, you become accustomed to this weather, the humidity, the heat. Especially, we haven't had real cold spell down here in a while. When you go to 36 and it's windy, that's a big difference in temperature and environment. Your body feels the difference, and it makes a difference for those that are accustomed to it, as opposed to those that aren't accustomed to it. So that's just a factor you have to calculate and bring into the fact. Listen, my in-laws and my wife. My wife was born in New Jersey. Her parents are Cuban. They immigrated from Cuba to New Jersey. Lived in Elizabeth, New Jersey. Super cold. They were used to it. They felt the environment. They were down here 3 months and went back to visit New Jersey. In March and end of February, March, and they were like, "This is way too cold for us now." Your body adapts quickly to it, so it is what it is.
All right. J-325. He says, this is probably more for Carlos, but feel free to chime in, Manny. Thank you for the permission, Jordan. You get to throw one Thanksgiving dish at Joey Galloway. Which one are you choosing?
One Thanksgiving dish at Joey Galloway. Um, I've never been a big fan of cranberries. So if you have cranberry sauce or like some sort of canned cranberry, we can maybe put some other stuff in there that isn't as appetizing, I would throw that. The other thing I would throw at, and my sister thankfully doesn't listen to this podcast. Um, my sister had this thing about putting apples and raisins and some other stuff inside the stuffing, and
Mm-hmm.
I almost threw that at her. Uh, the first year she did it, and the second year she brought a second stuffing that didn't contain those things, but still brought the first, and I still almost threw that at her because it was sacrilege. That was blasphemy.
Oh, brother, I don't throw things at people. Sadly, Jordan, just don't. All right, Armando
Well, he
Izagiri,
doesn't anymore because his shoulder's bum. He's got a bum shoulder, but if his
yes.
shoulder was right, he'd be throwing things all over the place.
AY2 Mondo, Armando Zagari. What is the most important thing for Miami to get right going forward? to sustain long-term success. I think we've hit on it.
Yeah.
Dominate the ACC. Concentrate, make all of your emphasis on just ACC games and winning the conference, because that's all that's going to get you into the playoff.
Right. And I think offensively have a clear offensive scheme and system where you have your set, your base plays and counters to those when the defense adjusts. So you have a system in place, not a grab bag offense.
This is from JBoy1724, Javier B. Happy Thanksgiving, my friends. I think Miami needs help with two teams losing ahead of them to have a chance to get in. What say you? Also, do you bust out the Cajachina for Thanksgiving too?
Unfortunately, like I've stated, there is no Cajachina for me this year. So I'm a little sad about that. Nobody's decided to do it. I'm hoping Noche Buena somebody busts out. We're gonna have Piedna and stuff, but I don't know if anybody's gonna bust out the Cajachina. I don't have one. I've wanted one for years. My wife does not let me buy one because she's afraid I'll burn the house down.
As far as the two teams losing ahead of Miami, I think Alabama has the best chance of that. Losing to Auburn this weekend at Jordan Hare. After that, I would say the team with the next best chance of losing is probably Oregon to Washington. I don't think Notre Dame loses. And who's number 8 again, Carlos? I'm forgetting somebody.
Well, you got Ole Miss there. You got Oklahoma.
Ole Miss could lose. Oklahoma's got zombie LSU. I just don't see it.
Yeah.
Don't
And
see
even
it
if they
happen.
lose, I mean, that doesn't necessarily mean Miami moves up. And again, if you have the scenario where
Ohio
Michigan,
State pulls an upset. I mean,
yeah,
Michigan pulls an upset.
Michigan beats Ohio State, Texas beats Texas A&M. Now you've
Go
got a
past
real,
Miami.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's got a real shit show.
All right. Warm take from JK Slay. This game versus Pitt is the biggest game of Mario's tenure. Not for the playoffs, but for perception. A win doesn't necessarily boost, but a loss increases the negative can't finish narrative. He needs to win to move the program forward, even if they don't make the playoffs. Sorry. Carlos, what are your thoughts on that?
I mean, it's just a big game. It is what it is, and it shouldn't have been this big of a game had they not lost twice in conference. Right? The bigger games were the ones they lost in conference. I think ultimately, right now, every game the past few weeks has been the biggest game because of that reason, because of the 2 losses. So, yeah, in a sense, it is the biggest one in his tenure. But unfortunately, the biggest ones that he needs a result from aren't even ones that he can control.
Yeah, I don't think this is the biggest game of his tenure, because I think everybody knows that Miami's on the outside looking in, and they have no chance really of making the playoff without a bunch of big upsets. And so they have no control over this. They had control over the SMU and Louisville games. And now they're screwed. And that's the bottom line. And to me, yes, will people negatively react to this if they lose the last game of the season? Yeah, but I think also a lot of people turn around and say, well, they weren't going to make the playoff anyway, right? That's what they're going to say in the end. And if they do win, people are still going to crap on them and say, well, you didn't make the playoff. So I don't know
It's
that
a
there's
catch
really a,
22, really.
yeah, it really is. All right, this is from Kane Finn. Does Mario keep using the transfer portal to reload a quarterback year after year, or is there a 5-star in sight for future classes? I don't know if you've noticed, Kane Finn, but everybody in the country continues to attack the transfer portal for quarterbacks. There's not a whole lot of, hey, we're grooming this guy and waiting for him to develop and become a star. Like outside of Bryce Underwood and even Julian Sain's a transfer that came into Ohio State from Alabama. Everybody is basically just stealing quarterbacks from somebody else. That's just the way that the game has gone, and uh, finding the right guy is not easy, and developing them at the high school level. And I just don't know that that's Shannon Dawson's strength, to be honest.
It's not. It absolutely is not. So they need somebody that's already ready made. If it's somebody that has to be developed and really grown into something, it's not. It's not Shannon Dawson's forte.
All right, this is Corey Lowe from Twitter. With this new ranking, do we really have a shot at the playoffs if we beat Pitt? Thanks, guys. I think no. I just don't. We've gone over that over and over again.
Listen, there is a chance. It may not be great, but there's a chance.
All right. This is from Prez NRP12 on Twitter. Did you think the lessons learned regarding offensive play calling carry over into the next season? What is your projection for starting quarterback next season? It's a good way to wrap it up, by the way. Carlos, do you think Mario learned anything from this season and the fact that you can't coach like you're coaching an NFL game where we're going to pound the ball and play keep away?
I hope he did. I mean, I think he's seen the results of that the last few weeks. Ultimately, I don't know. I think so far he's shown he's self-aware enough to make these adjustments. Now, giving up the control of the offense is something I don't think he's ever done in his career in that sense. Uh, because he's had guys and he has had systems in Oregon in place before where they could have been a little bit more wide open and scored more points and didn't. So, hopefully this is the final lesson for that he makes the decision to say, I've got to turn this offense over to my offensive coordinator, let him run with it. Now, is Dawson the guy really that'll make it elite? I don't know. Like I said, I think his initial game plans are great. Doesn't counter well, and it's more grab bag than it is system. So let's see what happens. Hopefully, Dawson, maybe if he sticks around next season, is able to implement this from the start and have a system in place to be able to prepare for defensive adjustments.
Yeah, but I think Mario does learn lessons from things. I just think, unfortunately, it's in his nature to simply want to pound the football. Now, last year was the exception. He had Cam Ward and he didn't have a defense, so he had no choice to play but that way. But I think he believes in his heart that you play old school football, and I think that's something that he picked up with Nick Saban. I think that's something that he feels is a core value. That if you have an offensive line, you run the ball behind them, and you run predictable offense. You don't put yourself in position to turn it over. You win the game. You grind it out. I think it's in his DNA, and I think I don't know that that's ever going to change for him. I think the only thing that can change for him is that he ends up with the right kind of people around him, whether it's players or coaches, that push him to not allow him to fall into those traps. And if
Which is ironic because even Saban evolved
right,
the offense, right? And hired guys like Bill O'Brien and Lane Kiffin to really open those offenses up for Alabama and took it to a different level. The other thing
right,
is, I think that's why a guy like if Shannon Dawson leaves, a guy with a strong personality as the offensive coordinator is key. A guy like a Mike Gundy or Ken Dorsey, guys that have done it for a long time and know what they're doing, and can stand up to Mario and say, "Listen, this is the way I'm doing it. You fire me on the sideline, but this is where we're calling plays. That's the way it has to happen."
yep. Yeah, it's probably the only way it changes. Carlos, appreciate you, brother. We've been on for over an hour now. I want you to be able to get to your first Thanksgiving today. I've got to upload all this video content, edit it, etc., and post it for our viewers. But I appreciate you guys tuning in to Wide Right this season. We will be back with more show, I'm sure, next week. Any final thoughts, Carlos?
Yes, I have to take a laxative and also take a walk. We'll take a walk first. I don't want to take the laxative before I take the walk. That'll be dangerous. And clean out the system. Make sure I'm ready for Thanksgiving. But
Yeah.
above all, I want to thank you guys. I'm thankful for all of you guys that watch the show on YouTube, that continue to comment, that continue to support us. Even those of you that drop hateful, shitty comments all the time, you are still giving us views, and I appreciate you. I appreciate you having enough intensity and love for the show that you despise us both. Whatever
Yes.
works, whatever floats your boat. Most of all, I'm thankful for Manny, his friendship, and the opportunity to be on here with you guys.
Oh,
Without
that's
him, none
nice.
of this happens, man. So many blessings to you and the family. Love you guys. All the best at Thanksgiving.
Same here, brother. Love you guys. Love your family. Love everything about our little show here and what we get to do every single week during the season. And obviously, wish you nothing but good health going forward. Same here for the people in my family. Visiting my mom, who of course is has her own little health issues. So I'm grateful that I'm here for that. And hope you Miami fans get everything you want this Thanksgiving. Maybe even a win Saturday against Pittsburgh and some luck to get you into the playoff. But we will see what happens with that. Thank you for tuning in to Wide Right. We will be back next week.
Peace.